and welcome to episode 14 of That 60s Recording Podcast, the podcast that has conversations inspired by the golden era of recording. My name is Joe Montague, and I am your host. I hope you've all had a great couple of weeks and enjoyed the last double episode. I have another double episode for you this week. I hope that this is an okay medium for you all. I know that my attention span, even when I'm having the conversation, sometimes lapses towards the end if it's been a couple of hours. And I know that I wanted the conversations to be expansive, and I was finding the more comfortable I became as a host, if you like, the more I wanted to get out of the guests. So the conversations inevitably have started to become a little longer. And I know from podcast listening experience, I begin to wane after 40 minutes to an hour or so. I wanted to keep these quite short, so 2 parts seemed like a sensible way of doing it. It means that the interviews can be slightly more in-depth and I can let the interviewees talk a little bit longer. So the next few episodes will actually be 2-parters. I have a very exciting guest coming up after this one as well. And this one is also a very exciting guest. So I'm chatting with Neil Innes from ATA Records. They are, ATA stands for All Things Analogue. And Neil has a studio that he runs with his label mate Pete. They record and write a huge amount of music. They're playing on a lot of the releases that they release as a label. So ATA is also a record label. It's a very cool little space. If you go onto my Instagram at All You Need Is Drums, I've put some photos of the studio on there. That is littered with tape machines, old gear, amplifiers, you name it, he's got it there. It's ridiculous. And we've got some more information coming up in the podcast on what the gear that he's got. It's unbelievable. I've known Neil for a few years now, and he's just a wealth of knowledge on analog recording, has a real 60s mentality to do it in terms of the way he does things. Go and check out the Bandcamp of ATA Records and have a listen to some of the stuff they release. It sounds like it's something straight out of the 60s. It's amazing. And Neil is a humble guy, so he won't admit that he knows what he's doing too much. But he really, really does know what he's doing. Even if he's just following his gut instinct, it's somehow correct. He's fantastic. So I'm no doubt that you will learn a huge amount from this conversation. So we'll dive right in. Here we go. Neil Innes. Enjoy. Okay, I am joined by a friend of mine, Neil Innes, who runs a record label and studio called ATA Records. Hi, Neil.
Hello, Joe.
This is a bit of a first for me, actually. So the first time on the podcast, I am physically in the room with the person I'm interviewing. So I'm looking at Neil right now, and that's not happened before. Usually, as you all know, it's on the phone or on a video chat. So I'm actually really pleased to be here at ATA. So thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I want to start. You'll notice I will have given you a little bit of information in the introduction, but I want to let Neil sort of explain what ATA is and sort of what it's about, and then we'll start digging deeper into it. So if you could just maybe sort of describe the space that we're in, and then you can sort of tell people like the sort of overall vibe of what is ATA.
Okay, so at the moment we are sat in our control room, which is a garage. Basically, my whole studio is a set of garages in Leeds, in the north of England. In here, we have basically just a lot of analogue recording equipment that would have been used in the 60s to make records. So the sort of premise of kind of what I've collected for making the music that I write and I'm part of with ATA Records is what would they have used back in the 60s, because a lot of our music is very 1960s influenced, sort of soul, jazz, R&B, Afrobeat, things like that. So we're sat at my mixing desk, which is a 1968 Swedish Broadcast Console, and sat beside that is a 3M M56 2-inch 16 track from 1968 as well. And behind Joe, sort of linking into his Beatles obsession, is a 1-inch M23 8-track, which the Beatles used on the White Album, I think, which was the first sort of 8-track that EMI got in. That up to that point they were using 4 tracks, weren't they?
Yes.
So I saw a wonderful picture. I follow a Facebook group. I think it's called At the Controls, which is basically just pictures from studios, which are one of my biggest research resources for what for things that people do and the equipment that they used. So, for example, and I'm going off piste already, the 3M tape machines were quite ubiquitous in studios for a certain period of making records. Like, I don't know if you've got the book, but I've got the book there, which is the Great British Recording Studios. Do you have that book?
I don't.
Do you have that book?
But I should.
Absolutely,
if I should have it, I would.
Wonderful book, just about all the British recording studios. Weirdly written by an American, but he did an amazing job. But inside that, you flick through every studio, and in every studio, tucked in a corner, pretty much, is a 3M tape machine. So they're quite sort of, whether you know it or not, you know the sound.
Yeah.
You know the sound. Anyway, back to that, At the Controls. Is it Magic? What's the Magic? What's the guy that John Lennon brought into the Beatles that did? Is it Magic?
It's like Magic Allen or something.
It's
like
Magic
that,
Allen. It's not Magic Al.
It's not Alan,
That's an actual magician in Leeds.
Is it?
Wee Magic Al, who goes around gigs and sort of does amazing magic. But it's I've forgotten the guy's name. Anyway, there's a great picture of him with 3 of them.
Oh yeah.
In that sort of whimsical studio that he couldn't build, which is I want to know more about this guy. I really want to know more about him because it sounds so fucking ridiculous. The stuff that he did. Anyway, you rarely see you rarely see any of these machines. Like I think of the 3M of the M56 that's there were 300 and something made in total.
Yeah.
So how many were in the UK? Like I know for a fact that one that you're looking at there came from Air Studios.
Wow.
So they've all been generally in a sort of high-end studio because, and again, I've gone off on one.
I love it.
But I found out how much they cost. And they cost something like £24,000 in 1968. I was told by one of the guys who's the sort of foremost sort of repairers in the UK. So I think a flat in London, like in a good part of London, costs £6,000. A Beetle, a Mini costs like £600. £24,000.
So that's 24,000 60s money.
Yeah, 60s money.
Before you've even converted it to modern money. That's madness.
It is madness.
Yeah.
Like I've heard other old studio guys talk about this as well, like when they bought their first tape machines and they're just prohibitively expensive, like cost 4 or 5 times the amount of their house.
Wow.
So this studio is just kind of chocker full of a lot of this old gear, which plays one part, but an important part in the sound that we achieve with the music that we're trying to make, and through the door is my live room, which again is just kind of full of like lots of old microphones, many from Stuart in one of your earlier podcasts, Exaudia microphones.
That's right. I think
and Extinct Audio.
1,
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
I think he was. And so I get a lot of my mics from Stuart, which I have to say, if anybody's here listening and they're kind of like, oh, I'm thinking about getting a vintage ribbon mic or thinking about getting a new microphone, go to Stuart. He's the man. It's like there's no point fanning around on the internet when you can just buy one from him, and it's like everything through there. All my mics are just tip-top condition, because they come from him. I just don't waste my time anymore.
Well, you're the reason that I know Stuart. For a little bit of context, Neil is kind of like my recording guru. Any questions I've ever had, I ask Neil and then ignore his advice and then come back cap in hand and say I should have listened to him a year later when I've made my choice, and then I realised that he was right.
You'll be punished financially.
Yes, and that has been the case. Yeah, but I feel less guilty about that now. I know how much tape machines cost.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I've got permission to go out and buy loads of stuff.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But the weird thing about these tape machines in particular, they're kind of like what they're worth now is really arbitrary, So like those two tape. Oop, I hit my mic. Those two tape machines that we're looking at there, because I've got two of the M56s because. They have often died, right? they have died a lot and been brought back to life, but I think I picked them both up for under £1,000.
Wow!
Because like the cost to do them up, it's more than they're actually worth. So I've bought into this thing. It's a sound that I love. That through the other room behind you, which is my current storage room, where there are more tape machines. There's this sort of younger, sexier brother or sibling of the 3M56, which is the 3M79.
Okay.
And they came out. And I think this is why you don't see many of the M56s, is within 2-3 years, they put out an improved version called an M79, which is better.
Okay.
Doesn't sound as good, but we're talking like fine hairs here. Do you know what I mean? It's because the other thing is the M79 is another sound that you just know because so much of music was made with them. If you know Queen, you know the M79. So like the I used to have a couple of them from Olympic Studios, and one of them had a Ford badge stuck on the front of it, and it was the famous. Oh, you've got the Ford badge one. And they stuck the Ford badge on that because it broke down so much. Like that was their joke. But the amount of records that were recorded on that machine is just ridiculous.
That's very cool.
Yeah, but very quickly they were usurped.
Yes.
So the thing is, not many people know about them. Not many people know how to repair them. And so therefore they've kind of fallen through the cracks a little bit.
Yeah.
So I've got quite a few of them. Currently, we did a stock take of tape machines recently, and I think I've got 11 tape machines.
Wow!
And I'm going to have to get rid. We're getting rid of some of them because we are about to. The studio's really dishevelled in it. You've been here plenty of times. Yes. It's got charm,
yes,
but it's a bunch of garages with a lot of cobwebs. It doesn't smell very good. It's great place. I love it. Make it like, I don't know what I've had it for 10 years, no, 12 years I found out, maybe even 13. So maybe we could go on a bit about that.
Yeah.
So I first got this place with a friend of mine called Bob Birch, who was an incredible Hammond organ player.
Yes, I know
for
Bob,
a band called the New Master Sounds. And Bob found it, and it was basically, he'd been working in a piano shop. So this was a piano workshop to begin with.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Headingley Pianos it was called.
Wow.
And so we only had the live room through there, and the rent was £160 a month. The rent hadn't gone up when I went to visit my landlord to ask for more garages. It turns out the rent hadn't gone up for around 20 years.
Wow.
So, at which point he put the rent up. So we had one live room. We did a gig. Once we had a residency.
Yeah.
That paid for it easily.
Amazing.
And since, over the years, I just kept on doing it up and expanding, got another garage, because it's in a big row of garages.
Yeah, I should quickly explain that when you drive in to here, you drive between two...
it's in the backyard.
It's like they're like semis, aren't they? And you drive between them, but they're flats.
Yes.
And then you drive in between them to the garages out the back, and it's in like a...
It's a U shape.
Yeah, a U shape of garages.
It's all garages in the backyard, yeah. And so we've got essentially 5 garages, I think, sort of in a row, and I've kind of breeze blocked up. Well, my friend, I will mix the cement because so other people have done the building work. Yeah. But we've breeze blocked up doors and knocked through, to create sort of live room, control room, and sort of store room. And through in the other room, it's got charm, but it's cold. Like I don't have the stomach to kind of work here in the winter anymore like I used to. Like I remember being in there on the first before I started up the record label. So the ATA stands for All Things Analogue, which it isn't. You know, like all things analog is my aspiration.
Yes.
You know, and I'm almost there. You know, but we have to use computers as well for stuff. But I remember before the record label was formed, like catalog number ATA001 is not. You can't get it anywhere because it's a record that I made before the record label. We've got it pressed up on CD. It's before we did any vinyl. It's before I started the record label. But I remember being in the far corner where the drums are around December. I'd been making this album for about 9 months. It was approaching the end of it. And I kind of learned to play guitar, or learned to be a better guitar player on that album because I'm a bass player by trade. It used to frustrate me that I couldn't sort of convey ideas in the way that I'd like to, so I was kind of like, right, I better pick up an instrument that I can do that with. I had previously learned guitar as a kid. You know, I'd actually done classical guitar as a kid for like a year or so.
Right.
And almost studied it at university.
Did you?
Well, not a weird story. Basically, it's back in the time where there was no such thing as rock school because I'm an old person.
Yeah.
But it was like back in the 90s. So I was in Scotland, and to do higher music, which is the same as A-level music. I wanted to do higher music, and I wanted to do it on bass because I loved bass, and that's kind of what I enjoyed playing. And they're like, "Oh, you can't do that. I'm afraid we can't grade bass, and like an electric bass, right?" And so I'd done a bit of guitar before, so basically I had to do classical guitar, and I had to get it to grade 5. So I had 9 months to get it to grade 5. But you're a kid though; you work like crazy, don't you? So then I had to do a second instrument, and they were like, "Well, can I do bass?" I said no. So I had to do orchestral percussion.
Oh wow! I did not know this.
I was a timpanist.
Really?
Yeah, I fucking love timpans.
I bet.
It's great.
Very cool.
Really good. Anyway, like when I started the studio, that album was me getting good at, or not even good, not even competent, adequate at playing guitar. I remember just sat in that corner doing a 12-string guitar part with a duffel coat on, and I could see my breath coming out. Like, I'm sure many people who've had studios like this have been in that position. I almost got hypothermia in here once.
Wow.
That's another story. So it's quite a ramshackle place, but it's a great place. Like, it's the positives of this place have been the affordability. Like, we were talking to somebody about this. So I think making music it's definitely prohibitively expensive.
Yes.
For so many people. And it's just been sort of stubbornness and luck that I've been able to have this place. Like, when we found it, as I said, it was like £160 a month. It's next to nothing, isn't it? You know, and then all this gear. The majority of it, because I'm quite I wouldn't say an obsessive collector, because I kind of don't.
I mean, I'm looking around and it might say
there's 10 tape machines in here. But the reason there's 10, I'll justify. Well, the reason there's 10 tape machines here because spare parts are so kind of they just don't exist.
Yes.
So anytime I see a 3M tape machine, I'm just kind of like, shit, I'm gonna have to find some money to get this because, I just hate the idea of not having them. Because they're such a integral part to what we do here at ATA.
Yeah.
So it's bad though. I'm getting rid of. They're good. Like the M79s. Like they are a sort of safety net.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, okay, if those die, I can always use one of these. But I don't like using them as much. Not as much fun to me.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm about to get them like properly refurbed, which will be fantastic. So, does that explain anything about ATA? Or should I say something more about ATA?
No, that explains it perfectly. I mean, one of the things I find really interesting, and I seem to have this conversation quite a lot, is that lots of studios, especially the ones that seem to work, are in
places where you wouldn't expect them to be. So you
Yes.
would, with the garage closed, you'd never know that this would
That's
be a
the
studio.
idea.
It looks like a load of garages.
Yeah.
And my studio is in the living room of an old flat.
Yeah.
In a working men's club.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love that studios that seem to survive. And my rent's cheap.
Yeah.
And that's how I make it work.
Well, that's probably the underlying factor, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's cheap rents.
That's it.
Rather than searching for somewhere odd, it's more like, where can I afford to stick a studio?
Yes.
Like, we both know, or most of us know, like if we had this in London, this wouldn't happen.
Absolutely
ATA
not, no.
wouldn't exist
No.
as a thing. It's like having the allowance, to sort of, that it doesn't bankrupt me to sort of run this place has allowed me the years and years of kind of, sharpening or honing our craft
Yes.
of making music and how we want to go about making music, because I think I was about to say it's quite different or it feels quite different to how a lot of people go about making music, but to me it's how music should be made and how music was made.
Yes.
Now I'm not. Oh, that is such a faux pas. Oh, it's my parents FaceTiming.
I'm not editing this out. Sorry.
That's fair enough. Shameful. So the way that we make music in here, or we want to make music, there's lots of different ways of making music, isn't there?
Yes.
But the way for us, it does involves time. You know what I mean? To sort of like that's kind of one of the things that baffles me about sort of, or how I feel so lucky to have this, is because I have the time to experiment, and like I'm not looking at a clock. If I want to record something again, it's awkward to get people back in or whatever, but we can if we want to, so we like to. It's not always entirely live. In fact, I would say it's entirely live, but we want to set out doing things like they did back when they made sort of these classic albums. So one of the things that I love about a tape machine, because this is how I sort of, one of the things that I've grown to understand, it's not necessarily the tape machine that's making it sound like the 60s or that kind of classic period of making records. It's about the process that the tape machine imposes upon you. Mm-hmm. Once you understand that, you can just transfer that to whatever you're doing. So one of the things that the tape machine does, it's quite a crude kind of transport tape machine kind of thing. So drop-ins, edits. I'd rather just start the tune again.
Yes.
So we often, and that scares the bejesus out of people. What? You're going to wipe over it, or don't wipe over it? So, oh God, so often I've wiped over really good takes as well, just because I'm kind of like, nah, it can be better. And then you're like, oh, the best. I'm sorry, I do rabbit on. One of the best sort of stories about this, of sort of like getting a take. Joost Hendricks,
yes, fantastic drummer.
Fantastic drummer. Joost has been part of ATA Records for a long time. So me and Joost, we work on a band called The Sorcerers, and so we were making the Sorcerer latest album, Sorcerer's album, worth checking out if you fancy doing it. It's called, yeah, I said it's called, and I can't remember the title of it. In Search of the Lost City of the Monkey God. There you go.
I've heard it, and I can clarify that it is definitely worth buying.
So Joost was up for maybe 2 days, I think, or something, to track all the drums. So here's an example of like how we'll track something, right? So with the Sorcerers, Joost on drums, myself on bass, and my label partner Pete on percussion, and we just track all the tracks. So we've kind of got in our heads what is going to be on top of it afterwards, but we'll just track all those live as a little rhythm section, basically. And Pete had gone for the day because he had childcare, had to pick up his kid or something, and it was left with me and Joost, and I was knackered, and Joost was kind of like, oh, come on, let's do a few more things. At which point we wrote a couple of like really nice things that are on the album, and one of them, a track called End Credits. Now, on our 45 release of that album, there's the alternate take of End Credits.
Okay.
So me and Joost wrote this thing dead quick, and it was fucking brilliant, banging sort of track. And we were like, we'll knock this out in seconds. It took us 3 hours. Like, it really did, because it, like, the contrast between the A and the B section, the sort of the wind kept on going out of our sails when we were doing it. So there's one version of it that we did to a click, and there's one version that we didn't do it to a click. So we just thought we'd repurpose that as a thing, and like we did an alternate version of it when we came to finish the track off. But yeah, we like to try and we like to get complete takes. That's one of the things that I think makes the music. I was about to say really good, but that sounded big-headed. Satisfactory
Yes.
to what I'm trying to achieve. It's like you want to get from start to finish on a track, and what that would surprise you, or maybe it wouldn't, how difficult that is for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that just being able to get from beginning of a tune to the end of the tune, you know, is really hard. So that's one of the things that it's like, you know, we try and do, or what the tape machine has helped us realize. You know, it's like, well, you just get a performance.
Yes.
But one of the things that I have always thought, or sort of, became apparent when, or this thought became apparent to me when I changed sound cards.
Okay.
The computerized side of it, you know, sort of the way that I get the music from the analog tape to the computer to mix it, because it's pretty costly to finish the process of having all your analog gear so tip top that you can mix stuff analog. I'm almost there, as I said.
Yeah.
It's almost there. But when I transferred the tape to the computer, and we do it at a high sample rate, you know, but I'd often notice this change to the sound of it. And it's like I could do a quick desk mix of a track through my desk and onto a 2-track. And then you'd sort of do it onto the computer and mix it, and you'd be like, where's it gone? Where's the quality of it gone? You know, so we changed sound card. A friend of mine at Greenmount Studios, who are like brilliant producers and engineers, they started using this sound card called the Lynx Aurora.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I didn't lose the sound of my tape machine when it got transferred through. But one of the things that sort of made me think about is, and maybe this is a difference, you know, between recording now and recording back then, that maybe slightly prohibits how people make music, is that when you do a take on this tape machine, have you ever recorded the tape machine in here with me, or is it mainly been on projects that have just been like,
Yeah, they've
they've
been
just
on
gone to
Logic.
computer, haven't they?
Yeah.
So what I found with the tape machine is you'd put something down, and this is when I'd record other bands as well, that, you know, that aren't anything to do with an ATA, so I'm kind of observing how they're, you know, reacting to stuff. They do a take and they come through and you press play and their jaws would hit the ground. They kind of be like, wow, oh, it sounds really good. So a lot of this equipment, they obviously was geared around making the music sound good immediately.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Whereas computers, most people are trying to make the music sound good afterwards, you know, because it's all in the box. Like all the stuff that gives it the kind of like, oh, that's nice, is in the computer. It's not on the way into the computer, right? So like with this stuff, and how I was sort of taught by people that kind of gave me advice, was get the closest sound to the finished record as you can possible before it hits the tape, right? So people would come through here and they go, shit, that sounds really good. And then they go back through to the room and perform with confidence.
Yes, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, we sound great.
Yeah.
You know, whereas for most people, like their experience in the studio when they are recording is they're kind of like, oh, that's a bit cold, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they don't feel confident, like they lose their vibe, they lose their kind of, you know, they just lose their vibe. And it's like you're working hard to get back to the thing in your head that you thought that you were going to be doing.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So you can do that without that equipment. But that's how I'd always say to you, you know, when like we were talking, you know, say about advice about what to do when setting up a studio, like things to buy, you know, and I was always kind of like, what's really important? I was kind of like, well, preamps. Because I often found that like a a really good preamp would make an average mic sound really good.
Yes.
It'd make most mics sound, really good, sort of thing. And then you're at that point, or not at that point, you're at the beginning of that point of going, oh, this sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's do this, instead of kind of thinking to yourself, right, I've got to, make sure I do this, so I'll stick my Ampex plug in. Oh, there we go,
Yeah.
I've got a creaky seat, by the way, I've
Oh,
noticed.
I have too. It's fine.
So, so the equipment does so much. But when I've been thinking about this kind of analogy, one of the things I thought to myself was, well, how often back in the 60s did bands get to go and listen to playback?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so one of the things I'm sort of, or as a label we've been interested in, is library music from the 60s.
Yeah.
So for people who might not know, that's sort of just music for film, television, stuff like that, for adverts. But the quality of that stuff is jaw-dropping. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. But I was thinking about those guys, right? And first of all, they'd never go into playback. Because they were hired guns, weren't they?
Yeah.
Well, maybe they would go into playback. I don't know. Like, I was trying to think. I think I have seen photographs. Back to my research. I have seen photographs of them in control rooms, like the players. But I'm sure that's not till like later in their careers, where they weren't just doing library music, So I was talking to Alan Hawkshaw.
Okay.
So have you heard of Alan?
No.
You heard of Alan Hawkshaw?
No.
Alan Hawkshaw's from Leeds.
Oh, is it?
Right. So Alan Hawkshaw, like a great a great way for you to know him. Like
Yes.
I'm sure you're sort of old enough. Grange Hill.
Oh, yeah.
He wrote- Yeah, so Grange Hill was a track called Chicken Man. That's what it was originally called. So Grange Hill wasn't written for Grange Hill.
Okay.
It was just written in a library music session. Now, Alan Hawkshaw is a Hammond organ player,
Yeah.
mainly.
Okay.
And anyway, I was listening to, so he's from Leeds. He's done a huge amount of library music. He wrote Channel 4 News, played on Grandstand. I think he played on Grandstand because it was Keith Mansfield that wrote that, I think.
Yeah.
But these guys, so I was just thinking about their ability, right? So their sessions, like one thing you can do if you read Alan Hawkshaw's book, because he's got a book, it's sort of just about his career and everything. He got a bit of his session diary, and it blow your fucking nuts off. Like, they were literally, and oh, by the way, here's another plug for you.
Yeah.
Is a friend of mine made a film called the Library Music Film. So if you're interested in library music,
Yeah.
it covers so many aspects of like recording, writing, and just amazing music, from all over Europe, and a little bit. I don't think they touched on America at all, because but it was very specifically a European thing. It feels very British, or
Yeah.
very Italian, or very French. But that has a lot of information about this stuff
Okay.
that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But in that thing, they go on about, they had like a string section on mopeds that were just going around London, trying to make all the sessions. They'd be doing like, I think there was an early session that would take you up to sort of just after 9, and then like an 11 till 1, and then like you know what I mean? So they could be doing
Yeah.
4 sessions a day.
Well, they were all 3 hours in length, weren't they?
Exactly.
So it's union contracts.
Something that we were thinking about doing here.
Yeah.
Like because Kinda Blue is 2 3.5 hour sessions. 2 3.5 hour sessions. That's all. Like, obviously there was years of practice,
Yeah.
preparation, thought. The band had been playing together for, but 2 3 hour sessions.
Mind blowing, isn't it?
Absolutely mind blowing. And Kinda Blue, every track in Kinda Blue is the first time that they played the track from start to finish.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a great book on that as well, about the making of Kinda Blue.
I think I own it.
Yeah, is
But
it
been
Can? A guy called Can.
It is,
it
yeah.
Ashley
Can.
Ashley Can, I think.
I have it, but it's been years since I've
But
read it.
it's beautiful when he talks about in the prologue about, I think it's in Columbia Records, I might be wrong, but the guy comes up, pair of white gloves on, hears the reels, puts down 2 reels, threads it up, ding, and you hear Miles Davis's voice kind of, and then it just goes into Bill Evans's piano intro.
Yeah.
Into, so every tune in that is the first time that they played it from start to finish.
Interesting.
So I think there's a sort of outtakes thing where you hear the beginning of Freddie the Freeloader or something.
Yeah.
They get, I don't know, not even a minute in, and Miles Davis calls it and they start it again. You know, so it's like that.
Yeah.
So the point of that is just the sheer ability of these guys, right? So you go through and listen to the KPM stuff, which Alan Hawkshaw did a lot on, and every solo, right? These guys aren't complex players, right?
Yeah.
But every solo just does exactly what it needs to do. Every organ hit, everything. They're such disciplined, sort of amazingly honed players that can just go, ready? Here we go. Bang. Done. Next, right, we've got 3 tunes to get through. Tune 2, okay, everybody, have a look. You know, they didn't get the parts 2 weeks before. It's like, here you go, yeah, we're doing this. Okay. You know.
So they have to almost... I think there's something I really enjoy about 60s and 70s sort of session musicians. You know, some of my favourite players like Philly Joe Jones and Carol Kay. Who are, these just ridiculous players who... The reason that I like them so much is that I think when they're doing these sessions that you're talking about, they almost have to default to sort of how do I explain this? So they can't try out new things necessarily. Everything has to be in their arsenal. So they're just playing stuff that they know is going to fit really well and works. And
there's a brilliant sorry to interrupt you. There's a brilliant YouTube video. So have you ever seen the film called The Wrecking Crew?
Yeah.
So have you seen the bit where is it Tedesco? Is it Johnny Tedesco?
I think so. Yeah.
The guitar player for The Wrecking Crew is doing a seminar about working as a musician, and he's doing I think first of all a session like Charlie's Angels, I think he said it was in Mexico, and he plays this flamenco lick, and then he's somewhere else, and they go on about like Tijuana, and he just plays this like every time they ask him for some sort of lick that is slightly south of the border of America, doesn't matter what country, he just plays that lick. That's my sort of like flamenco lick. And he laughs because he's like, nobody ever twigged.
No, I've seen that clip.
But the Carol Kay's a brilliant, just an amazing. You know, the fact, like I've done this once, and again, it's like finance, isn't it? You know, it goes right to the back burner. You can get a bass lesson from Carol Kay. The time when I did it, it was £35. £35 to have a Skype hour with Carol Kay in our living room. The stuff I learnt from that lesson, you know, is so fascinating just speaking to her. You know, because like again, the difference between how those players play, where they come from, how their musical journey has been informed, like the difference between drummers now and drummers then is all the rock drummers came through a jazz sort of lens, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Like a friend of mine, and I don't know the names, right? But a friend of mine was telling me another drummer who works here, like an old friend of mine, who's got that kind of Ginger Baker thing about his drumming. He's a jazz drummer, right? Yeah. Now he was saying all the British rock drummers went through one guy, who he kind of went through as well. I don't know enough about this story, right? But it's kind of like Phil. Is it Phil Seaman, the guy that taught Ginger Baker?
Yes.
He also taught Mitch Mitchell. Not Phil Seaman. This guy also taught Mitch Mitchell. You know, so they all came through this sort of like one guy.
Yeah.
So rock drummers now, though, is they come through learning rock music first of all.
Yes.
So their feel is completely different.
Yeah.
Than the feel of these classic drummers of that time. But the thing is, like, even Ringo's feel is completely different as well because of his sort of setup. Because you see, like, I don't know enough about his upbringing, but was he a jazz drummer? I feel like it was more like not a show drummer, but you know, he did bands.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. And he, as far as I'm aware, he didn't have many, if any, lessons.
Yeah.
And I think that coming out of like this skiffle thing of the
yes,
50s,
yeah.
still jazz tinted.
Yes, yeah,
and
but
the whole
not.
sort of early rock and roll thing.
Yeah.
Is, rock and roll beat. A lot
Yeah.
of it's essentially a jazz beat.
Yeah.
And there's the shuffle thing that doesn't
Yeah.
tend to exist much nowadays. But
No.
shuffle, they all knew how to play a good shuffle.
Yeah.
Ringo's a great example of what we're kind of discussing, in the sense that he plays what's necessary. There are times when he can sort of stretch out on
Yeah.
Beatles records, but especially the first few albums, stretch out as far as
Well, he
Ringo
didn't
can
want that. I'm
stretch.
laughing because I was like reading that bit about him just really didn't want to.
No.
And I get that. I totally get that because, like, as a player, like, I'm not a flash player. I don't have, like, because I don't want to be. I want to be a bass player. Like, I'm not interested in sort of music for musicians.
Yeah, bass
You know what
player
I mean?
for songs.
Yeah, I'm going to play the tune. I'm going to do the best, the best I can within that tune. But I can understand with Ringo, it's sort of like, I have so little interest. Like, I've come from a jazz sort of funnel.
Yep.
I've done a lot of it. I've got no interest in taking a solo. It bores the shit out of me. Like a bass solo.
Yeah.
It's like there's a handful of great bass solos. And I mean a handful. The rest are just fucking time filler. It's like, yeah, it really is. Like there's, I remember at college, like because I went to Leeds College of Music. Did you go to Leeds College of Music?
I also did the jazz course.
Brilliant. So when I went to Leeds College of Music, I learned so little in that. Sorry, this isn't a good advert for Leeds College of Music, but the most of it I learned out of Leeds College of Music, right? And I remember I was lucky enough to kind of know a lot of musicians older than I was. Who were just incredible, and they are incredible, But there was this bass player, there's this singer, this Scottish guy. So another, like, there's a lot of Scottish people in Leeds, isn't there? It's kind of like a place that a lot of us end up to do music. So there's this singer, a guy called John McCallum, and he sounded like Stevie Wonder or Donny Hathaway. It's just jaw-dropping. And then in his band, there was this bass player called Greg Robinson, who turned out is, I don't know how much older Greg is, maybe like 4 years older than me, I think. But Greg's from the same town as me.
Wow.
Yeah, he's from the same town in Scotland. I remember just being in their flat one night when I think I was 18 or something, but they put on Donny Hathaway live. And it was very much the whole night was, oh, have you not heard that album? Oh, come on, let's put on this album. So, like, I don't know what that accent was, by the way, because neither of them are from Glasgow.
It's all just Scottish to me.
Yeah, exactly. So they put on Donny Hathaway live when is captured possibly the greatest bass solo ever done. But I say that tongue in cheek because Donny Hathaway, like, there's says before the solo starts, the greatest bass player, and sort of I can't remember how he says it. I've messed that up, but he's basically like the greatest bass player in the world.
Yeah.
Willie Weeks. Boom. And he does this bass solo that's so, it's just fabulous. It almost like sums up bass to me. And the way he does it is so simple as well. So it's kind of like all the other stuff just feels like fluff to me.
Yeah.
Because it's like bass is a low instrument. So, does it want to move as fast?
Yes,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does it want to be up here, like in the top end of it? It's like there's a few people can make that sound beautiful on an upright,
Yes.
But sometimes I feel like it wants to move at the speed that it's meant to move at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And Willie Weeks' bass solo just starts off with boom, dum, 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 and it's just like so bass.
Yeah.
He just plays the bass.
Yes, yeah.
Instead, I've got a terrible singing voice, so that probably just came out as muffled garbage. So listen to Willie Weeks. Everything is everything.
I have the album the Donny Hathaway album, because you told me to buy it. And
I've given that album away so many times.
Have you?
I've had so many copies of it that I just said, have it, take that album away.
Amazing.
Because it's, so like the way that people play now, that sort of funnel is very different. Like Carol Kay goes on about, so say when we were at jazz college, they talk about a syllabus of scales.
Yeah.
And I've got this great bit where Carol Kay was, I recorded it on my phone. I recorded the lesson, and she was like, scales, she says, scales are for squares. Said like when she was in jam sessions, nobody played scales. They all played arpeggios because it was bebop.
Yeah.
So they're just like, scales are for squares. I say
Yeah.
that all the time. It's scales are for squares. Like, what scale do I play over this? So again, like the academia maybe and the sort of the way music has gone now, it often very much feels like music for musicians, but sometimes I observe that these musicians aren't that great at being musical. You ask someone, like back to that thing about Alan Hawkshaw, you ask someone to do a 16-bar solo. Like, I want you to, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was going to use a really crude analogy, but, my pants want to be off by the end of it. Do you know what I mean? You've got 16 bars.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
To kind of like, and those guys could do it.
It's it's really interesting. We were talking before we started recording about what do I want to discuss with you, and one of the things that I really enjoy about this podcast particularly, and the conversations that I get to have, is it's there's so much gear in here, and I'd like to talk about some of it. But I was intending on talking about a lot of gear, and we've spent 45 minutes chatting about the way that the music ends up being as a result of the method of recording that you're using, and that sums it up for me. That yes, okay, there is absolutely a sound attached to sort of 60s or that golden era of recording, but it's an attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before anything,
yeah.
And that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've had from knowing you.
Yeah, is
okay. The service that I offer at my studio, sort of drum recording, I have to cater for a modern sound to a degree. I send people a lot of stems. That was one of the biggest discussions we used to have, was why do you have so many mics? And that's something I was going to bring up earlier.
Brilliant.
Is when I've done sessions here, it's like a kick and overhead and maybe a snare, and that's just it. And the sound's amazing, like you said. And I love that. So it incorporated in my setup is that minimal setup.
Yeah.
And if I was to mix it, that's what I
use.
But I try hard to approach my sessions and approach my mentality at the studio with the influence of what we've just been discussing. So I'll do full takes, and I try it's on the way in that's important, and that's all of that mentality stuff that we've just been discussing is so, I find it fascinating, and I that's one of the things I'm most grateful for having known you for, is sort of learning that way around it, even though setup wise the way I work is very different to the way that you work here, even though I'm sort of in inverted commas sort of working from the sort of vintage side of things. It's certainly a lot more modern.
It's the technology that's informed that kind of, because for a lot of people they don't know what they want, do they? That's another thing. And especially to do with the difference. The equipment here, you make decisions first.
Yes.
If we're going to chop out, like, again, I say that, but I use a computer, so at times those decisions will go onto a computer. But we're very another really funny, or just not that funny, is it? Another interesting example of kind of people's opinions or sort of perception, about how you do stuff. So this ties in very nicely with our latest release, which we did years ago, absolutely years ago. It's called Somebody Stole My Thunder, and it's a big band. So I got a friend of mine who works with a label called Steve Parry, who's a big band arranger, right?
Yes.
Guy's amazing. I love working. He's so interesting, so knowledgeable. He'd blow your head off about Beatles stuff.
That's interesting. I was going to say I recognise the name, and it will be from Big Band Scores, reading them on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I think he even played. So Steve plays Everett. Steve's one of those guys. Music just flows through him. You know what I mean? He's a great sort of band leader as well, and stuff like that. And this is going to tie into something I'm going to say in a second. But I think he played in he did a depth session in Will Lee's. Is it Will Lee, the bass player? He has a Beatles band. Will Lee's like, he plays on somebody's talk show in America. He's like one of those, but he's a big session bass player. But he has a really good Beatles tribute band. And Steve was making me laugh because he plays everything. So he was playing trumpet, trombone, French horn, and flute.
Wow. Wow.
Just for this for this one gig. But anyway,
It might well be the Fab Four. I'm sort of thinking,
I don't know.
Is he New York based?
Could be, probably,
Because if it's New York, it will be the Fab Four. I mean, obviously, we were chatting before. I've had Rich Pagano on here, who's the drummer in that. But I don't.
I only I know of Will Lee because he does the Heard It Through the Grapevine on James Jamerson's Bible bass book.
Yeah,
His track 3 is sort of on that. He's doing that one. But so we were doing this session. Like I asked Steve to sort of arrange some horns for. And I think we ended up doing like 5 saxes, 4 trombones, and 4 trumpets, I think. How many mics do you think we used?
So this is all tracking them all at once?
All in there, yeah. So we had like playback speaker playing the sort of, the track.
Well, there's sort of logical... I say logical. The way that it would be done is that everybody has a mic. So what's that?
Of course.
That's 12.
Yeah.
And then a couple of room mics.
Yeah.
So I would say my guess for a normal studio would be like 15 maybe.
2.
2?
2 microphones.
Amazing.
So we had...
do you remember what they were?
Absolutely. They were two RCAs. Not RCAs actually, but copies of two RCA Varacoustics, which are like a Poor Man 77, RCA 77, which is like a quite renowned ribbon microphone that's used a lot. So we had the saxes in the drum, like the drum corner.
Yeah.
So because the ribbon mics are figure of 8, we put 3 saxes on one side, 2 on another. So they were tucked away over there, and they had the null point of the figure of 8 pointing towards the brass. And all the brass were kind of in a line, I think, just playing towards the other mic. Right? Now, that is one of the best horn recordings I've got of a big band.
Wow.
It sounds like to this day. So we released it because we had a bit of a hole in our release schedule. So we're like, all right, we need to put something out. So we took these 2 tracks that we did at the very beginning of the sort of start of the label, and I listened to them. They came back on the 45, and I just thought, God, what did I know back then that I don't know now?
Yeah.
It was really interesting listening to these tracks, but the sound, because it's a big band kind of thing, the sound of the horns on that are amazing, and there's so many contributing factors to that, which I'll say in a minute. But the funniest thing is we're in here and we play back. Band comes, or the section come through, and one of the trombone players goes, "Wow, that sounds fucking incredible!" Like it was really. He says that's the best playback I've ever heard. But it's back to that thing of I've used the right equipment that sort of does that. I have very little EQs here or anything, so it's got a lot to do with them as well.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I said to him is, "We're going to do another take." And he says, so you're going to keep that one then? I'm like, no. So he couldn't get his head round that we had to wipe, because that we were using the other version of that tape machine, which only had 13 working tracks. That one has 14 out of the 16.
Right.
So anyway, it's like if you don't get it right, we're doing it again. Because I've got nowhere to keep it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, he was like, what? Couldn't get his head round it. But went through. Anyway, one of the main reasons I think that recording sounds so good is because of Steve. So he's called, like, jokingly Sergeant Parry, right? But everybody, like, you can see them, when he's conducting this sort of section, nobody wants to fuck up.
Yeah.
And that's a similar thing, like when you talk to those guys back about sessions in the 60s, you didn't want to be the guy that fucked up.
No.
Because you're doing it again. And then you're going to be the guy, that caused that to happen. You might not even get asked back ever again.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And nowadays, it would just be a case of it's cool. We'll just delete that one and you can overdub it or something.
Or we'll keep all of them and we'll comp out of it again, which is not, that's. I'm not saying that's a bad thing either, though, because like when I used to have, earlier you're talking about what should we talk about? Maybe one of the first things that you worked on. I used to have an Otari tape machine. Sorry, I hit the mic stand. I used to have an Otari tape machine that, compared to these tape machines, is like running a computer.
Yeah.
Like drop-ins, you can drop in syllables.
Oh, really?
You know, like things like that. It's incredible what
Wow.
you can do with it, you know. So, like, often, you know, I've comped together takes that way. Do you know what I mean? So there's nothing wrong with comping together takes, but there is this element of never committing to your actual take.
Yes.
So surely that attitude or that feeling has to come through in the music of just like, "Meh, whatever, you know, it's all right, comp it together." Instead of that feeling of like, man, and when you hear that horn section, that's two mics, and you kind of go, how's that two mics? Because they were playing like motherfuckers.
Yeah.
You know, they were like, and I've got a video, it's on our sort of Facebook somewhere years ago of Steve, you know, just going, right, you know, so everyone, you know, and he's got that kind of vibe about him. Like me and him were actually talking about this only like about a week ago, because I've just put out we've just put out this 45, and I was laughing, and he was like, yeah, because I'm a belligerent fucker. You know, it's like, it's going to be done his way.
Yeah.
And it's dead interesting. You know, so like, since, you know, you mentioned this podcast, I have been thinking lots about, you know, what is, I do anyway, but, you know, like in terms for this podcast, I was thinking, what is 60s recording? What is, you know, and there's so many aspects of in that chain, you know, that make or have made these records, and they're not one chain, they're different chains, you know. So people talk about so we specialize in a lot of kind of like funk stuff and things, and I like a lot of rare stuff that people have, you know, things that you discover that you're like, where was that made? You know, like a good example of this, my mate has a 45, because I've got a very good friend who's a record collector who educate, like, a lot of my education, like back to that thing about, you know, education out of college.
Yeah.
I lived with him for like 6 years.
Oh, right.
We spent so much time sort of like early hours of the morning. What, you haven't heard this? He'll go off, come back with 6 records. The knowledge that this guy has. Anyway, he's got like a 45 of like this R&B, you know, for black R&B musicians cussing the governor of a certain state. You know, there's 45 of them going, and I hope he goes into surgery, and when he goes into surgery, the lights fail, and they're operating in the dark, and they only have a rusty spoon, you know, and it's just like, how did that record get made?
Yeah.
It's clearly in the 60s.
Yeah.
Clearly in a time when, like, maybe making a record like that might cause you a bit of difficulty. You know what I mean? Is that like, so there's so many aspects to kind of like production of that kind of music. So, for example, in relation to that kind of rare funk, a lot of people think the production is just add a lot of distortion onto this. Or lots of people think funk music is just like a beat and a groove that goes on. But sometimes that funky break was in the middle of an amazing tune, or that funky break was the intro to a terrible tune.
Yeah.
You know, or like the whole idea of distortion. It's not something that they were kind of going, oh, do you know what? Let's drive the shit out of this.
Yes.
It was maybe, you've paid for an hour, son, get the track done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. And it's just like, right, well, we've done it. Okay, we better just press it up. Oh, the drums are horribly distorted. Well, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
It was recorded to a 2-track. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that.
Yes,
you know, there's so many of so those things weren't so much a stylistic choice, you know, that they made.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I was thinking about this morning.
No,
See, that's why I'm rabbiting on about. So then you've got things like the idea that equipment was primitive or sound was primitive. That equipment was not primitive.
Yeah.
It was limited, but not primitive. I've got some recordings of this blues guys from 1958. You wouldn't believe how quiet. There's no noise floor on the tape. There's no noise floor at all. And it's an Ampex. And I've heard stuff on early Ampex machines. Remember when I said to you, you're like setting up the studio, you said, what should I buy?
Yeah.
I said a 4-track Ampex.
You did say that.
Because it's like the preamps, I couldn't believe how good they are. And this recording is like how hi-fi it is from 1958.
Wow.
And my mastering engineer said a little bit about this. He was kind of like, well, a lot of recordings got fucked in the mastering process, you know, because it just didn't, you know, because mastering was kind of quite different back then, wasn't it? Like, especially in that Jeff Emmerich book, it's fascinating. Like, I heard you mention that book, but like, it's fascinating when they talk about how your training, once you got out of making tea, sort of started in the mastering room, because you've got to know how to master before you know what to sort of provide somebody to then master. So yeah, the equipment was limited, as in like maybe they only had one track to record to, or two tracks to record to, or like the one I love that I guess not slips through your idea, but you don't often see them anymore because they're useless in today's music in a way, is a 3-track Ampex.
Yeah.
So it'd be like band vocals overdubs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like 3-track tape machine. What? It seems that because we work in sort of even numbers, don't we? You want left and right. You want stereo, or you want, okay, well, I want 4. And stuff like that. So, the equipment was limiting, but it was not primitive. Like, a friend of mine has a early 60s or maybe even late 50s Ampex 300.
Yeah.
And he stuck a microphone. It was in his house. His lass was having she has a band. They're having a rehearsal downstairs, a kind of like folk thing. Stuck a fairly flat, nondescript like mic, a KM84, I think, Neumann, which is a very flat mic. It's not very characterful. You're not like, wow, listen. It's just like, what you record is what you get.
Yeah.
Anyway, he stuck it through a tape machine, 1 track, got the mic in the right place. You couldn't fault the recording. You were just like that. You could release that. It's incredible. So to me, like, that's why it always makes so much more sense. It's like, why fanny around on the other ends? Yeah. Like trying to make all that. Because I often find when you're mixing, oh man, it just seems so sort of destructive as a process that you're like, to make something better. Yeah. You're taking so much away. Whereas if you get it right at the beginning, people have recorded here and taken files away, and then like one of the things that they've said is kind of like, I didn't have to do anything to it. Which I don't think I've got any special skill. I was just taught a few very important things.
Yes.
Get that sound as close or some people say, oh wow, how'd you get that sound? I'm like, oh, buy this. Because all I have to do is turn the fader up. And it does the rest for me in some respects. I'm being slightly tongue-in-cheek, but
This is a conversation we've had in the past a lot of times, and I think it's something that I've learned from you, and I get the same thing back for my drums. Like, not to like blow my own trumpet, but it's, if I send stems to people, often I'll get back, I don't really have to do anything to them.
Brilliant.
And I don't have loads of plugins on anything. It's just the mics are in a good position. Yeah. And the drums are good and well tuned, and I've got good preamps and decent quality mics. I've taken all the advice that you gave me. The best thing that you said to me about mics once was that imagine them as being a photograph of what they're looking at. And it's just been gold dust. Yeah. And that means
it's a cracker, that one, isn't it?
Oh, brilliant.
It's not mine.
Was it not? Well, it just...
oh, absolutely not.
It just sort of changed my perception of what a microphone is. And that means that now I can...
Yes.
I remember when it clicked, and I think I probably came to see you shortly after, and I can remember just being buzzing. Like the day it all worked, and I made everything just sort of went together.
It's a good day, innit?
Well, the sound was just... I mean, you know what it's
like. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a good day. You go, wow, listen to that.
Because how many days in the studio do you spend setting stuff up where it doesn't work, and you go home deflated? You just feel like, maybe, what have you done today? Oh, well, I just
think I got something wrong for 8 hours.
Yes, exactly. And on that day where I listened back to it and it sounded huge,
brilliant,
and I looked at all the plugins, and there was all the channel list on my next window, there was no plugins on it, and I was like, it sounds amazing, and there's no plugins on it. What is this?
It's such a lovely feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant.
A few things like with that. I remember talking. There's a drummer that I don't know if you've come across here that I used to use quite a bit. I'd like to use a lot more again, but he's just in another city, which always makes it a little bit difficult. He's a guy called Errol Roberts.
Yes,
and he was around when before I started the label. I did a lot of music with him. I remember the first time I gigged with him. We had no sound check, and I was sort of first time with the band. It was down at the Wardrobe in Leeds downstairs. And I'm not kidding. It was like, counted it off, first note, I was just like, holy shit. Like that, he is a phenomenal example of someone who can get to the start, from the start to the end of a tune, you know, perfect, you know, exactly how you've asked him to.
Yes.
And his groove, he just sits immediately. It's like bang. And he's told me a lot of, like, I had learned a lot from him about stuff. Like one of the things he said to me once, and back to that thing about the ability, you know, as a musician, he said in his early 20s, he went and did this Celtic rock session, and it was just a dead simple beat he was asked to do, but he couldn't really do it. And he was just like that. It's something that just made him go, shit, you know, like, surely I've got to be able to do this first and foremost. And I know a lot of people who are kind of like, when they see him play, they're a bit like, oh, he doesn't do much sort of thing. I'm just like, wow, you don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't get it. You just don't get it.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, with Errol, I remember saying to him about one microphone, you know, sort of like doing this kind of like one mic thing. And again, that came down to me not having many mics.
Yeah.
I don't have enough mics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just, you know, I'll tell you a story about the one mic thing in a second. But like that one mic, I said to Errol, it's like, oh, it's, you know, it's just incredible, isn't it? And Errol was kind of like, well, yeah, I was saying to him, isn't it amazing how sort of good it sounds, you know, like a full balance kit. And Errol kind of looked at me and says, well, that's because I balance the kit when I play it, right? And then he said, we were in Cellar Bar at the time, you know, just a gig after a recording. Great days, you know what I mean? When you used to be able to do all that stuff. No, you can still do it. But anyway, he's at the kit. And it's great. I can do a great impression of his body movements because they're so wonderful. I love his body movements. But he was like looking at the toms. He says, right, well, you know, he says, look at that drum kit because it's the house drum kit, and there's just a mess of, you know, sort of hits all over the skin.
Everywhere.
Yeah, and that kind of discolored, you know, dirt kind of thing. He's like, he said, see on my drum kit, there's a dot in the middle of each one because every time I hit the tom, I hit it right in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's how, like, when he hits it, like that movement that I've just done, he's so sure every time he hits it. But I've got a great track that we did on this album that's not out that it's kind of like a halftime folk, you know, it's sort of psychedelic 60s folk thing. And he's just kind of like toms and a bit Ringo-ish in a way, you know, over the A section. But on the B section, he goes to like a daka, 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 daka.
Yeah.
And we recorded it with a click, right? When it gets to that B section, without fail, each time he hits that B section, you know, when he's dat, so his cross stick is on the sort of crotchet, the metronome disappears.
Yeah.
It disappears every time he went to it, and like his ability to kind of go into this kind of feel. But that one mic thing, I remember when I bought that mic, an RCA Vari acoustic. I bought it, you know, years ago because I'd found out that it was the poor man's version of an RCA 77. So an RCA 77 was about 1,200 quid.
Yep.
If you were lucky, you'd pick up a Vari acoustic for 300.
Okay.
Of which I did.
Yes.
Right? And we got it here and plugged it in, and Eddie Hick was here.
Yeah, I know.
And Al McSween.
Yeah, I know Al.
And somebody else, I can't remember who it was, but I plugged in that RCA, put it down, and everybody was dancing in the control room because it sounded like a breakbeat.
Yeah.
And then Al went, like Eddie came through, and Al went through and played the drums, and we were all just like, listen to that. I didn't have any good, you know, sort of, I had just an old Soundcraft desk and a Nisso Tari tape machine, and we were just like, listen to the sound of that, you know. And so in that aspect, that's when, you know, the piece of equipment was kind of like, wow, there you go. There's that instant gratification, you know, of the sound that you were looking for.
Yeah.
You know, I guess it's not to everybody's taste, but
no,
who's interested in everybody else's tastes?
It's fascinating, man. It's so interesting hearing all that stuff and all those stories. There was something that was coming to mind when you were talking before, but it's completely escaped me now. But anyway, I wonder, how are you doing for time?
I'm okay for
You're
time
right.
at the moment, yeah.
Because I want to talk a little bit about gear.
Oh, he's so mean. I'm very sorry. I couldn't help myself. There was a cliffhanger that was just begging to be had there. We continue that conversation next week where Neil tells us about, he sort of shows us around his studio, if you like. If you want to get some pictures of that gear in front of your eyes already, you can head to my Instagram at allyouneedisdrums, and it will be on the post I put up about this podcast. At ATA Records, they've been kind enough to give us, the listeners of this podcast, a 25% off discount code for everything that they've got up on their Bandcamp. I'll put details of this up on Instagram, but if I could just get my messages, there we go. So if you type in recording pod, all lowercase, into your checkout at Bandcamp, you'll get 25% off everything. I own a lot of that catalogue already, and it is honestly fantastic. Neil works with some amazing musicians. Neil is an amazing musician. Pete is an amazing musician. Just go and listen to that stuff and support these guys. They're doing something really, really special up here in Leeds, and I just urge you to show some support for some people that are doing things in the way that we love things to be done. So that's that. I don't really have much else to report. I'm still on with the prospect of mugs. I've spoken to my graphic designer who is putting together some mug designs for me, and I will hopefully bring news of those. You'll also notice that I probably sound a little bit different on the intros and outros of this week. That is because I am moving house. So my little home studio that I usually record my podcasts in has been packed up into a box, and I am now recording this in my actual studio. So I'm using a completely different mic and preamp and interface. So it probably sounds a heck of a lot better, to be honest. Okay. All that leaves me to do is to say thank you to my good friend Joe Kane for the intro and outro music he put together for me, and to my good friend David Henshaw and mug designer for coming up with the artwork and supplying me with the beautiful artwork every fortnight. And I will speak to you next week with the second part of my conversation with Neil. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great fortnight. Goodbye!